Welcome to Reinventing Broadcast, where AI meets content. Hosted by Ben Anker. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Broadcast Media, The Inside Track. I am Ben Anker, and today we are unpacking what 2025 taught us about AI agents and what that means for broadcast leaders heading into 2026. The hype cycle was enormous. Autonomous agents were going to revolutionize everything. The reality turned out to be far more grounded, far more practical, and honestly, far more interesting for broadcast operations. To help us cut through the noise and talk about what is actually happening in the industry, I am joined by RaIAna. Welcome back.
Great to be here, Ben. 2025 felt like the year we had to answer a fundamental question. What does an agent actually do? And I think the honest answer is that giving an AI system access to a tool does not automatically make it an effective agent. That distinction, understanding the difference between capability and operational deployment, matters more for broadcast than almost any other industry. I have been digging into the latest industry analysis on how AI intersects with media operations, and it is remarkable how much of what we are seeing in practice aligns with what the engineering community is identifying as the real opportunities.
This is exactly the conversation I want to have, because there has been so much noise about autonomous agents making independent decisions, working without oversight, essentially running productions on their own. But that has not been what we are seeing in real deployments, especially in broadcast. I was reading some research from Maven about the shift from what they call tinkerer to implementer thinking. The idea that a lot of organizations got excited about experimenting with AI, building demos, but struggled to move from experimentation into actual production deployment. That is the gap, right?
Exactly. And it ties directly to the talent problem. There is massive demand for people who can actually deploy AI systems, not people who can tinker with them in notebooks, but people who understand production systems, operational constraints, compliance requirements. Maven's research suggests that gap between where organizations want to be and the talent available to get them there is widening, not closing. And here is what made 2025 so interesting. Organizations started realizing that you cannot hire your way out of this. You cannot just add AI specialists and expect them to understand broadcast operations. You need people who think about AI as part of a larger operational system. The reality is actually more interesting than the hype suggests. Most agent systems perform really well in constrained, well-defined environments. Single clear objective, limited variables, short decision horizons. Works great, but broadcast is fundamentally different. The moment you step into multivariable problems, and broadcast is nothing but multivariable problems, things become much more complicated. Decisions interact with each other. Context shifts constantly. Recovery from errors requires human judgment. Think about your scheduling system. It is not making a single decision. It is balancing day-part performance targets against audience fatigue, seasonal patterns, competitive programming, revenue requirements, technical constraints. That is not a simple optimization problem. That is a system with interconnected pressures.
You just described our nowcasting work perfectly. We are trying to predict audience engagement in real time. But we are not using a single signal. We are pulling from trending data, weather patterns, social media sentiment, official ratings, content delivery network logs, competitive activity. Each signal matters. They interact. Sometimes they conflict. And the model has to figure out which signals matter most in a given moment. That is why pure agent autonomy does not work. The system can make predictions. But the decision about what to do with those predictions requires human expertise about what your audience actually needs, what your business strategy is, what your technical infrastructure can handle.
Exactly. And this is where the conversation is shifting in 2026. We are moving away from thinking about agents as independent decision makers. We are moving toward thinking about agents as orchestration systems. The question is not, how do we make decisions without humans? The question is, how do we make better decisions faster, with humans remaining accountable? The engineering community is describing this as a mature progression. You start with language models as applications, then you add function calling capabilities, the ability to invoke specific tools. Then you move towards something called abstracted tool usage, where agents can discover and work with tools through standardized protocols rather than hard-coded integrations. And eventually you get to agents that can discover their own tools and even modify their own behavior. But broadcast is not moving at that speed, nor should it. Broadcast needs reliability and accountability more than it needs autonomy.
Let me get specific about what those abstracted tool protocols actually mean for a broadcast environment, because this is where the real opportunity emerges.
Right? So there are two emerging frameworks that matter here. One is called Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Think of it as a standardized language that lets an AI system understand and work with tools and data sources. Instead of building custom integrations between each system, you build once to the standard, and then any system that speaks MCP can access those tools. In broadcast, imagine an editing assistant agent. Instead of having hard-coded connections to your media asset management system, your edit suite, your effects library, and your compliance database, the agent speaks MCP. It can query the MAM for assets. It can request edits. It can check rights and licensing requirements. And here is what Andreas Horn at Human in the Loop is tracking. 2026 is going to be defined by how well systems actually execute reliably, not by raw capability. He calls it the shift from agent experimentation to agent reliability. 2025 was about learning what agents can and cannot do. 2026 is about building systems that work consistently. That reliability requirement is why inference time compute matters so much. You are not just making faster decisions. You are making decisions with different levels of reasoning, depending on the complexity of the problem. Routine operations, light compute. Critical decisions with multiple competing factors. Extended reasoning time. The system adapts.
So you eliminate all the custom middleware that usually takes months to build?
Exactly. But there is another layer. You also have agents that need to work together. An editing assistant agent, a compliance agent, a scheduling agent, a distribution agent. They need to coordinate. That is where agent-to-agent protocols come in. These frameworks define how independent agents, potentially from different vendors or organizations, can find each other, understand each other's capabilities, exchange tasks, and collaborate. So the editing assistant hands off a rights clearance task to the compliance agent. The compliance agent returns the results. The editing assistant then coordinates with the scheduling agent to figure out publication timing, all without anyone having to manually orchestrate these handoffs. This is what Maven means by moving from tinkerer to implementer. The tinkerer phase is when you are building one-off solutions. One agent does one thing. You manually handle the coordination. The implementer phase is when you have a platform for how agents work together reliably. The infrastructure becomes the focus, not individual agent capabilities.
This is not theoretical anymore.
Not theoretical. These are actively being developed and tested in the AI community. But because broadcast understands something critical, you cannot have proprietary integration frameworks controlling your entire production workflow. You need standards-based interoperability.
Let me shift to something more concrete. Where is ripe for actual broadcast production today?
Sports production is probably the best current example. Think about a live match. Modern broadcasts use multiple camera angles, often including 360-degree or fully autonomous cameras. Someone needs to detect the important moments. A goal, a great play, a controversial decision. Someone needs to extract and format that content for immediate distribution. Someone needs to tag it with metadata so it can be found later. Someone needs to generate real-time statistics. Player speeds, shooting accuracy, passing patterns to enhance the broadcast. That is multiple systems working in parallel under intense time pressure. A few years ago, that required a team of specialists making decisions in real time. Today, AI systems are handling portions of that workflow. Detection systems identify key moments. Encoding systems optimize the signal for different platforms. Metadata systems tag the content automatically. Statistical analysis systems generate graphics and overlays. But here is the critical part. None of those systems work in isolation. They have to coordinate, and that coordination has to happen fast and reliably.
And that is where orchestration matters more than autonomy.
Right? The detecting system does not independently decide what to broadcast. The encoding system does not independently decide what bitrate to use. The metadata system does not independently decide what tags apply. Human judgment still guides those decisions. But the systems prepare the information, surface the options, flag the uncertainties. Then the human decides.
This connects to something we have been talking about for a while. System 2 thinking. Extended reasoning at decision points. The idea is that you do not always run expensive cognitive operations. You run them when you actually need them.
Exactly. Andreas Horn at Human in the Loop calls this the scientific acceleration thesis. What he is observing is that AI systems are beginning to handle parts of the research and analysis process that previously required deep human expertise. They can evaluate competing hypotheses. They can help design experiments. They can interpret results under uncertainty. That is not autonomous decision-making. That is augmented human reasoning. In broadcast, that is precisely what you at Ancast Intelligence are pushing forwards with data science. You propose hypotheses about audience behaviour. The system helps you test those hypotheses against real data. It surfaces what the data supports, what it contradicts, where uncertainty exists. Then you, armed with that analysis, make the actual decision about content strategy. On a routine Tuesday broadcast, the system runs relatively straightforward processing. Detect content, encode it, tag it, distribute it, standard workflows. But during a major sporting event, during a breaking news situation, suddenly the complexity spikes. Multiple simultaneous events, competing priorities, uncertain outcomes. That is when you allocate extended reasoning power. The system thinks through the implications. It evaluates competing options. It flags risks and uncertainties. It surfaces recommendations with confidence levels. Then the human, armed with that analysis, makes the call.
And this connects to something I think is often overlooked in broadcast. You already have the data infrastructure to do this. Most industries do not.
This is huge. Broadcast has built, over decades, sophisticated systems for understanding audience behaviour. Official rating systems, content delivery infrastructure that logs which content reaches which audiences when, metadata systems that tag content with context, social media, monitoring that captures audience response in real time. Most industries trying to deploy AI wish they had this signal richness. Broadcast takes it for granted. You are not starting from zero, you are starting from a position of genuine data advantage.
But with that advantage comes responsibility. Because if your systems are making decisions based on audience data, and that data is biased, then your systems will make biased decisions at scale.
Yes, this is where ethics becomes not a compliance checkbox, but an engineering requirement. The research community has documented how facial recognition systems, trained on datasets that lack representation of women and darker skin tones, perform dramatically worse on those populations. In broadcast, that means your talent identification systems, your audience segmentation systems, your personalization algorithms, all of them have to be audited for bias. And it is not just about performance, it is about responsibility. Broadcast shapes how people see the world. You are distributing narratives. You are deciding who appears on screen. If your systems are systematically biased, you are encoding that bias at scale.
So how do you actually address this? How do you build broadcast AI systems that are both performant and ethical?
It starts at the organisational level. You need executive commitment to treating ethics not as a legal obligation, but as a competitive requirement. You need diversity in your data science, not just for the obvious reasons, but because diverse teams catch biases that homogeneous teams miss. At the technical level, you need what the research community calls the ethics pipeline. You start by really understanding your data. Know where it comes from, know what it represents and what it does not represent. Know what assumptions are baked into how it was collected. Then you build with transparency in mind. Use tools that let you understand what your models are actually doing. There are frameworks, SHAP, Lime, and others, that can help you identify which features matter most in your model's decision-making. If you discover that your model is weighting demographic information more heavily than professional qualifications, you can catch that and correct it. Finally, you make it part of your quality assurance process. Just like you test for technical performance, you test for bias and fairness.
This ties into something the engineering community is thinking about regarding standards. Because if you are going to build ethical systems, you need a common language and common practices.
Absolutely. Right now, if you ask 10 different organisations how they test for bias, you will get 10 different approaches. Some will be more rigorous than others. Some will miss important considerations entirely. Standards provide a baseline. They create accountability. They level the playing field. The broadcast industry specifically has unique requirements. You are dealing with intellectual property rights around talent. You are dealing with licensing requirements around content. You are dealing with regulatory compliance around content appropriateness. Those all intersect with AI in ways that other industries do not experience. So standardization efforts that take broadcast-specific requirements seriously are genuinely valuable.
Let me pivot to something practical. We talk about all this, orchestration, ethics, standards, But what does it actually look like for a broadcast company to move forward? What is the roadmap?
I think there are 3 phases. The first phase is exploration and capability building. You are learning what is actually possible in your specific operational context. What workflows could benefit from AI assistance? What data do you have available? What are your constraints around compliance, security, and operational reliability? That exploration usually works best as a structured proof of concept. 12 weeks, clear scope, specific success metrics. You pick a real problem, but not the most critical system yet. You learn whether the technology actually works for your operation. The second phase is pilot deployment. You take what you learned and move it into a production environment with real data, real workflows, but with safeguards. You are learning what happens when this system meets actual operational stress. You are building the muscle memory for how humans and machines actually work together in your specific context. The third phase is scaling. You are rolling out to additional workflows. You are integrating with other systems. You are building the organizational muscle around responsible AI deployment.
And the timeline?
If you move now, in January of 2026, you could have meaningful insights by mid-year. You could be in pilot deployment by late year. That puts you 6 to 9 months ahead of the organizations that wait for the standards to be perfect or for more vendors to enter the market. First mover advantage in broadcast is real. If you understand how to deploy orchestrated agents effectively, if you build with ethics and human-in-the-loop oversight, if you get the data infrastructure right, you can build a genuinely defensible competitive advantage.
There is also the talent consideration. Everyone says there is an AI talent shortage. For broadcast especially, that is a real constraint.
It is, but I would reframe it slightly. There is a shortage of generic AI talent. There is a much larger shortage of people who understand both AI and broadcast operations. That is where domain consultants and specialists come in. You're not trying to hire an AI expert and hoping they will figure out broadcast. You're engaging with people who understand the broadcast operation first and AI second. Ancast Intelligence is positioned exactly there. You understand broadcast workflows. You understand audience dynamics. You understand the technical infrastructure. And you are learning where AI can add value within those constraints. What Maven calls the forward-deployed engineer approach applies here. You embed expertise within the operational context rather than trying to apply generic AI knowledge from outside the domain.
So the advice for broadcast leaders right now is, do not wait for the perfect AI talent. Do not wait for perfect standards. Start exploring now. Find the right partners who understand your world. Pick a problem that matters but is not mission critical. Run a real proof of concept.
Exactly. And this ties to something Andreas Horn is tracking about advanced use cases. 2025 saw AI tackling basic automation and content generation. In 2026, the systems that will create real competitive advantage are those handling more sophisticated operational problems. AI ops, for example, using AI to manage your technical infrastructure, predict failures, optimize resource allocation. That is moving beyond content creation into the nervous system of your operation. Or revenue optimization, using AI to predict which content will resonate with which audience segments at which price points. That is not low-hanging fruit. That requires deep integration with your business systems. But the payoff is substantial for sure. And measure everything. Do not measure just the technical metrics. Did the system work? Also measure the business impact. Did it improve productivity? Did it improve quality? Did it reduce costs? Did it improve audience satisfaction? The organisations that will win at this are those that treat AI as a business problem first and a technology problem second.
RaIAna, thanks for walking through this. What are the key resources for listeners who want to go deeper?
3 things. First, look at what the broadcast engineering community is actually standardising. SMPTE, the EBU, and other technical bodies are actively working on how AI should be integrated into broadcast workflows. That work is public and worth paying attention to. Second, stay current on the research. There are many newsletters covering how AI is evolving across industries. Human augmentation, and Andreas Horn specifically, is tracking something important. The model landscape is bifurcating. You have frontier models, very large, computationally expensive, capable of sophisticated reasoning, and you have domain-specific models. Smaller, efficient, trained for specific broadcast tasks. Neither replaces the other. You likely need both. Large models for complex analysis and reasoning. Small models for specific, repeatable tasks at the edge of your infrastructure. The Bay Area courses on AI agents give you practical understanding of how these systems actually work, including the progression from experimentation to reliable deployment. Third, and most importantly, do not wait for perfect information. Start a conversation with partners who understand your business. Identify a real problem. Run a proof of concept. Learn by doing.
And for broadcast leaders thinking about this right now, at Ancast Intelligence are launching an AI discovery sprint program specifically for broadcast operators, 8 to 12 weeks, clear scope around a specific problem in your operation. At the end, you have not just reporting, but actual understanding of what AI can do in your environment, what it costs, what the risks are. If that interests you, reach out. We are building this specifically for the moment we are in right now. Thanks for listening to Broadcast Media, The Inside Track. I am Ben Anker. We will catch you next time.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to Reinventing Broadcast. Subscribe for more on AI content and the future of media. And visit ancast.tv for more info on Ben himself, the resources, other content, and news.